My friends, blizzard conditions are expected and blizzard warnings are in effect for Kansas and Missouri. A slew of winter storm warnings now going from West Kansas all the way to the nation's capital as we brace for a major winter storm to affect this region with heavy snow. Some places could see 1 foot to 2 feet of snow. Would not be shocking, especially across parts of Kansas. And then a lot of ice that could cause prolonged power outages. We're going to dig into all of that. Head to weather.gov if you want to see anything that you're under. A lot of uncertainty on this side of the storm, as winter storm watches are still out. No warnings just yet for Richmond as of the recording of this video. So again, make sure you head to weather.gov and get the latest. Again, here's a summary of what's going on. We've got our area of low pressure that will deepen early tomorrow morning. We've already seen the mixed precipitation across parts of Kansas today through the afternoon. And as we move into the overnight, there goes the low developing, and your winds will really pick up on the north side of that. Hence the blizzard conditions where you see those winds over 35 miles per hour, reducing visibilities less than 1/4 of a mile for at least 3 hours. That's a criteria for a blizzard. Looks like we're going to see that in these areas. And even outside of those blizzard warnings, with the wind blowing as hard as it's going to be, you could have whiteout conditions and blizzard conditions. It just may not meet that criteria. So an intense situation here, especially with that heavy snow band moving in as we get our cold trough moving in from the northwest. That is going to cause a lot of lift in the atmosphere as that cold air over top of that relatively warmer air moves in, and then that could cause enough lift that we get thunder snow. Pretty wild to see that. Snow rates could approach 2 inches an hour as this cold air moves through Kansas and Missouri. Even parts of, I think, the far southeast corner of Nebraska is going to get that heavy burst of snow. And, you know, some of the short-range models like the HRRR, not trying to put much snow into Iowa. Today's GFS was further to the north. I'm leaning more towards the HRRR, but some uncertainty, I think, as to how far north this goes. I think that's one of the reasons when you look at the winter storm warnings, it's only on the counties right on the Iowa-Missouri line. Winter storm warnings are out, though, for the southeast corner of Nebraska, and then again, they extend further to the east, so keep that in mind. All right, here's a look at the snow totals, and we're going to look at that in just a second. That's the ice totals, but look at this number being spit out by the HRRR, almost 30 inches in parts of Kansas, even into Missouri, 1 to 2 feet showing up here. I got to give this a second look and go, all right, we're getting down to the wire here. You start looking at these short-range models and go, are they catching on to something here? And I got to think that they might be. All right, to the south of this, anytime you see mixing with sleet or freezing rain, you're going to eat into your snow totals dramatically. And I also want to say, I've said this from the beginning, this entire area, there's such a rip-off potential for this snow because look how tight that snow gradient is from 13 inches to 0 here on the north side of this. So pretty impressive to see. And then on the southern side of it, you've got the ice potential where we flip over to sleet. And when that happens, again, you cut into those fluff amounts, so your snow totals go way down. But a good solid 8 to 16 inches of snow, I think, somewhere in this area. Now, there could be a dry slot that moves through as our low starts to wrap up, and that could cut down on some of your localized totals, but you get the idea of what we're looking at. A lot of freezing rain, too, possible in Kansas, southern Missouri, and then right along the Ohio River into Kentucky. This snow, that starts as snow, rather, will flip over to sleet and freezing rain, and especially on the northern side of it, we'll see that transition. But on the southern side, it may just start as freezing rain and stay there. And places like Tennessee, over here into southern Missouri, we may warm up enough to see a transition back over to plain rain. Further to the east, the confidence growing in and around D.C., Baltimore, out towards the Delmarva Peninsula, the northern part of that anyway, the entire state of Delaware, southern New Jersey, this is your snow, okay? I think we're going to get somewhere here 1 foot of snow easily. In fact, I don't know that we don't see locally more, especially into the higher elevations here into western Maryland, the northern part of West Virginia. And then as we move to the west, there's that snow we've already taken a look at. We're going to get into this a little bit closer in just a second. There's your ice potential growing here still. We've talked about Kentucky, but into Virginia and West Virginia, some ice here too, even as far south as North Carolina. The same thing for Tennessee. It's going to happen here too. You've got that warm air moving up. So on the southern side of this, we'll likely transition back over to just plain rain. But that cold air holding sharp here into the Roanoke Valley, the New River Valley. West of the mountains, though, will probably warm up enough that we transition over to rain for places like far southwest Virginia, southwest West Virginia. That's right in this area. And then into parts of eastern Kentucky. So that's something that we're watching, and also the severe threat as our cold front moves through, maybe some tornadoes. And this risk going up here, Storm Prediction Center pushing it up a little bit heading into Sunday, and that extends further to the south and east as we head into Monday. Now, Let's go beyond this really quickly here. I want to show you what we're looking at. There goes our storm right now. I backed everything up. It moves off the coast. We've got some lingering snow into the northeast, but some snow across the Rockies. This starts to look ominous to me because we've got this piece of energy in the upper levels, kind of like, well, that's a terrible drawing, kind of like this. That's your flow. So with this moving into the west, sort of digging down into the southwest, now you look to the Gulf Coast because you got your front laid out here as that cold air rushes in, and the tail end of this, does something develop? Well, the last several days have shown something. We're getting within that time period where I start to go, all right, let's look closer at these operational runs. We are still looking at the ensembles, but this could be a pretty significant storm. Now, the European does not blow this up into a northeast storm. The GFS does. The European has still got the idea of this thing moving north and east, not nearly as strong. It wants to push it out to sea as we see more northwest flow here and not really connecting. However, again, the GFS, a much different solution, a much more aggressive solution at that. Look at everything pretty close here. Maybe not as much snow across Texas. These details will be ironed out. And when you look at these long range, there are so many people in the comments. They get so mad. Why do we even show this stuff? Look, we're looking at now 6 days out, 5 days out, arguably. So this could be impactful. I think you need to at least be prepared in these areas. People were saying the same thing 5 days ago when we were talking about this system moving across the country causing snow. Now look at it. We've got winter storm warnings and blizzard warnings out there. I just want you to be prepared for what's on the table. This was not on the table last 2 weeks ago, right? But now it's starting to become a little more clear and you're seeing more agreement. I'll show you where I am feeling less confident now as we head into Friday and Saturday. What about this? I don't know, man. That to me, that looks too strong. But a lot of difference when these two big global models, the European, the GFS, when the Canadian gets on board with all of this too, I feel more confident. And if you remember, if you've been watching these videos, that's when I became more confident, is when I saw all three of the big global models start to show this snowstorm. And that was several days ago now. Snow across Texas on the ensembles growing. That's the data that I like to look at. We are definitely seeing that for the next storm. Let's dig into some of the details, though, with what's going on right now. This is a much closer look, and we're going to walk through the country. There's where we are as we head into the overnight. That freezing rain going across parts of Kansas. It'll eventually transition to snow as this colder air back here moves in from the northwest aloft. Low pressure bringing up lots of Gulf moisture out ahead of our system. We've got our cold air in place to the east. And now we're starting to spread that snow, sleet, freezing rain further to the east. So by sunrise, we're snowing in St. Louis. We've got the sleet to the south of that. Across central Missouri, we've got some freezing rain going. The yellow is sleet. This looks kind of weird to me that you would see sleet on the bottom end and then go to rain. It's probably more the opposite. Mostly sleet to the north and freezing rain the closer you get to the rain. And then as that cold air moves into Kansas aloft, boom, there goes your heavy snow. You're going to have driving winds. And even outside of the blizzard warnings that we have, I think there's the potential to see those blizzard conditions at times as winds, again, get over 35 miles per hour. Certainly possible. Reducing visibility is more than a quarter of a mile at times. Whiteout conditions, I think, are possible. And again, if you hold that up for 3 hours, that's what technically defines a blizzard, and it looks like we're going to see that again in parts of Kansas and northern parts of Missouri. As we move into Sunday afternoon, the rain into Tennessee continues to pour down. It could be really heavy into parts of Memphis, and that severe weather across the south will continue to march off to the east. The freezing rain in southern Kentucky and southern Tennessee transitions over to just plain rain, but now we've got the freezing rain right up and down the Ohio River. Again, southern parts of Iowa, I think we're going to see some snow out of this, and that's going to be a very sharp gradient line, and it almost splits the city of Indianapolis. Just a 20-mile wobble means a huge difference in snow here, so very, very tricky forecast. I think you get snow. It's my gut feeling based on what I'm seeing here. Could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. I'll be wrong again. So again, as this cold air aloft moves across Missouri too, so even into St. Louis, where I think there's going to be enough warm air aloft that we transition over to at least some sleet, and then some freezing rain possible south of that. As the cold air aloft moves through, boom, we go over to some snow, and we could get a quick dump of it before everything ends. And that could include, look at this, how far south that goes, maybe some flurries and snow showers into northern parts of Mississippi and Alabama. I don't know, but it's certainly not going to be a big one, but cold enough on some of the models that it's at least showing up here. All right, let's go to the east now. We're talking about this mid-Atlantic into the Virginias, West Virginia, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio. We've talked about some, but that snow moving into Columbus, getting pretty heavy as we head into early Monday morning. The Monday morning commute in D.C., oh my gosh, I mean, just forget about it. It's going to be nasty. Low pressure moving up the Tennessee Valley, up into Kentucky, dragging that warm air up with it. There's that warm air surging into southwest Virginia, transitioning the rain, I would say, west of the mountains over to the freezing rain rather, just to plain rain here, with that cold air a little more stubborn into parts of northern West Virginia, keeping things mostly freezing rain, also into southern Ohio and northern Kentucky. That does include Lexington, over to Huntington, Cincinnati. We go over to freezing rain, I think. North and east of that, even though we've got a lot of warm air moving in aloft, DC over to the Shenandoah Valley, at this point, it's looking like you might stay all snow. The caveat would be, do you flip over to freezing rain or sleet for just a little while? That's going to cut your totals down, even if it's just for a couple of hours. But there could also be some heavy banding as what we call frontogenesis develops here right ahead of your low. So with that tight compression going on here, you could get a really heavy band of snow across Maryland over into southern New Jersey and Delaware. I think this is an area you watch very closely, and I think you get ready. Winter storm warnings are out for these regions. Again, weather.gov is where you go. This is the very end of the HRRR's extent, so there's more snow on the way. And look, this is the HRRR ending at that point, still showing a foot of snow here for a good chunk of Delaware, pretty much the entire state. Pretty close to it anyway, a good 8 to 12 inches for all of Maryland. And then once you get into Virginia, even down toward Richmond, we're looking at 5-6 inches of snow maybe. Again, the problem will be sleet or freezing rain here that would eat into those totals. But go north up on 81, north of Lexington, up towards Harrisonburg, up toward Waynesboro, get north up toward Winchester. I think we end up with more snow here in this region. And then really north of I-64, that's where the snow will be. The I-66 corridor going into D.C., heavy snow here, I think. And then north of that up into Martinsburg, West Virginia, Hagerstown, Maryland, back into southern Pennsylvania. And I think Pittsburgh, I think you're in the game, especially the further south you go of Pittsburgh down here towards closer to Morgantown. Quite a bit of heavy snow in this part of the world. But look how the snow tapers off dramatically off to the south and west as that warm air moves north. And you can kind of see a sign of that too in the parts of West Virginia as we see the snow transition over to freezing rain. We might actually stay cold enough here in the West Virginia mountains for a mostly snow event, but I think we will see some sleet. Just for comparison, this is the GFS model, still showing the idea of that snow pretty much how our short-range HRRR is showing up. And I don't like to use the GFS this close to an event. I really like the HRRR, and people give me heat on it. I like the NAM. I do. I know it goes a little crazy sometimes, but it's always fun to look at and at least get an idea of what it's doing. Back to the west, this is HRRR showing that tight gradient to the north. I think this is the deal, though, right? There's a sharp rip-off zone here just north of Columbus, just north of Indianapolis somewhere. And as of right now, it's got a heavy dump of snow moving into Indianapolis and then back across central Illinois with more than a foot of snow. You can see these numbers. I don't have to tell you. You see this 19-inch here. I mean, this is pretty wild to look at. So this storm could overperform, in my opinion. Back across St. Louis, again, the official forecast may not be for 19.9 inches here into the city or 14.4. It's because look at the options to the south. You're looking at 4 inches of snow. So if this wobbles just a little bit, you could see why. But look back in here. A couple of these numbers, 25 inches. There's a 30-inch across northeast Kansas. These numbers are wild. And it's almost like the gradient of your 6 inches or more follows the Iowa border here recently. I don't know, man. I mean, it's going to be so close on that northern edge of it. If I say the snow line's going to be here, can you see the challenge here between 0.2 up to 19? I mean, you could drive here in like 25 minutes. So, yeah, a huge variety of weather across the plains. The big snow, again, back here into Kansas, somebody's going to see 2 feet of snow. We're going to get huge drifts of snow with the wind blowing and the snow around. Kansas City, maybe 15 inches, maybe more. Especially as that cold air aloft moves through. It's going to swing through from the west. And as it does, we see that transition of sleet, freezing rain over to all snow. Very interesting to see that. And here's your freezing rain totals across Kansas just to get a better idea. More heavy freezing rain across the south. And we'll start as freezing rain, and then you throw snow on top of that. That's just, that's nasty. Here's the European for comparison. It's also picking up on those 2-foot snow totals. So it's not just, that HRRR is not the outlier. All right, across the west, this is what we're looking at here too. We've got the snow moving through the Rockies into today, tonight, into early Sunday. It moves east. Not a lot going on across the Pacific Northwest. Some light rain and snow showers here. And then there's your next storm starting to show signs across parts of Utah, Colorado. It might actually put some snow. It's been a while since we've seen any precipitation into Arizona, maybe by Wednesday into New Mexico. as our storm starts to get organized here across Texas. Do we get snow into Texas? I don't know. I'm telling you, these things are starting to line up. I got to look at this and go, ooh, let's pay attention next week. All right, there's your snow totals across the west. Again, not nearly as intense for a change. Normally it's all out west, but now it's to the east as our blizzard marches off to the east. And there could be more next week. All right, that's all I got for now. Be safe out there. There's also some heavy snow still going downwind of the lakes. That will continue for the next little bit. In fact, we've got lake effect snow warnings up into this region. So more lake effect snow downwind of Lake Ontario, also downwind of Lake Erie. It doesn't include Buffalo. It's all to the south here, out here along I-90. So pretty rough go tonight with the lake effect. You can see these streamers here on the radar. All right, that's all I got for now. See you next time.